Good evening. Better late than never.
Yeah, a few minutes late, but sure, look, there was a game on, I think. It's funny how both of us seem to have similar gear on this evening. Why is that, Ollie?
I can't think, Brendan. I can't think.
Now, is that jersey you're wearing genuine, authentic?
No. This is made by Abibas, I believe.
Well, this is a gift. I think last week I was saying how I got a gift from my panaderia, and I do like the blue one, I have to say. But the reason I ask is that, and this it stood out. I was just checking Blue Radio before we came on, just in case there was no massive news that we might have missed. And there was a headline that 2,000 football shirts were, to use the Spanish word, decommissioned by the police in Barranquilla just ahead of the Colombia-Chile game. Like, I'm kind of going, but, chiviadas, as they say, so fake jerseys.
Yeah.
It's like, all you have to do is walk around anywhere, and they're on sale everywhere all the time. And nobody does anything.
That is very much pissing in the wind, isn't it?
Yeah, 2,000. Apparently, it will save 190 million. It was 190 million that could have gone if it was genuine money or whatever. I don't know, but it seems a little bit ridiculous. But anyway, Ollie, as you said, we are a little bit late because I think our producer was out watching the game, and of course we don't begrudge him that. Yeah.
But Brendan, you say that the blue one you like, and I've always said that the yellow one is not great on people with paler skin. So I've actually taken the liberty, Brendan, of not having just one, but actually, I've got my red one as well, which has always been my favourite, the red kit. I was very glad when they brought it back.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you have that on. I was frightened there for a moment when you took off the yellow one, what we were going to see. I may not have been able to continue with the show. But let's get on with things. And as alluded to, or more than alluded to, guys, we will be talking in greater detail about La Selección de Colombia, not just in the sport, but in our main topic in general. And of course, La Selección, the men's team, that is, on tonight's Bogotá Nights, Colombia's only live and interactive English language chat show. Because for both Ollie and I, our early days in the country coincided with the rise of the Jose Pekerman era, the high point of which was the 2014 World Cup, where the team reached the quarterfinals, of course. How does that side compare to the teams that reached 3 consecutive World Cups in the 1990s? And what about Reinaldo Rueda's selection of today, of tonight even? As ever, we love to get your comments live, so send us in your messages right now, and they'll magically appear on screen. If we've people watching, of course, after the game. If you do happen to be watching this recorded, though, you can still get involved by commenting on where you're viewing or via tweet, the handle being @BogotAPost with the hashtag Bogotá Nights, the name of the show. Our football focus is coming up in the second half of this show, or in about 15 minutes' time to be precise. But first to our review of the week's news. And Ollie, when we presented this show exactly 1 year ago, we were still coming to terms with a night of violent and deadly protests across Bogotá that had just occurred in the wake of Javier Ordóñez's death, following a very heavy-handed police arrest, to say the least, that happened to be caught on camera. There were fears that we might see something similar to mark the anniversary or whatever, but by all accounts, things were and have been calm, haven't they?
Yeah. I mean, it depends a little bit on what we call calm, but yeah, I would say so far it's been not too bad. We had, I think, 4 injuries last night. And we've got this weird situation, again, where as early as Wednesday, sort of midday Wednesday, perhaps even on Tuesday, we've got the Ministry of Defence saying that they've heard about a plot, they're not going to let it happen, nobody's going to damage Akai. And it's kind of part of a worrying trend that I think we've seen recently, Brendan, whereby the authorities in Colombia, they love to kind of announce how they're saving us from plots, which they never explain, never give any sort of evidence for. They just expect us to believe that they exist. And I think the effect of all of this is that actually a lot of people are just getting sick of hearing it from the government. And they don't really trust them. I don't think anybody genuinely believes that that there potentially was a plot or anything like that. So it's all very odd, very, very odd.
But is it some sort of like a preemptive strike by the authorities that they're kind of going, look, maybe people are planning something, so let's get it out there?
That's right. When we have a protest, they kind of come out to say, oh, well, we've heard that ELN are going to sabotage it and try to blow something up. When there's the anniversary of this, again, they're coming in going, oh, there's a plot to damage Kai's and we don't want you to be a part of this. And it's this sort of weird, almost Orwellian sort of mind games that they're playing with people. It's very odd. Very odd.
I guess I can see the other side of it, that maybe they think that they're doing something good by saying this, by kind of putting people on alert, and maybe some people who might be thinking, oh, well, I was going to attend this or I was going to do that, but no, maybe it's best to stay at home because things could get nasty. And
maybe I'm cynical. I think what really puts my hackles up is there's never any evidence and there's never any detail. It's always kind of this smoke and mirrors, just trust us, we're helping you. It does feel very odd, very sort of gaslighty. I'm not a fan of it. And to be honest, I think the long-term effect is that people just stop listening. And so in the future, if there genuinely is a dangerous situation and they say, look, we've got to go into alert level 5 or whatever, people just aren't going to take it seriously.
Yeah, maybe a bit like our lockdowns. After a couple of weeks, people just started to go about their business after a while, yeah. But obviously there are events taking place, and just a couple of blocks away from where I am now, right next to the Kai. On my way back, I was watching the game in my local panaderia, or my favourite panaderia, better said. So I took a walk by that way. So outside the Kai, it's all in darkness, not lit up, but it's pretty heavily guarded with a few SMAT and another police force with shields and things like that. But outside, there are a number of colourful posters posted to the wall of the Kai, all in support of the police. But then across the road, there's a relatively lively concert, or memorial concert. And it was in a park where the deaths that occurred around Verbinal happened. So that's going on at the same time, and there's one big painting on the basketball court in massive letters, which says it's our memories with your impunity, or something along those lines. We have our memories, basically, and you've got the impunity. But it all looks pretty peaceful and calm. I mean, I'd be very surprised if it was to turn ugly later on in the night. Like, the police are their side and very much not getting involved where this memorial is taking place. Didn't see too many Alcaldía officials around, I must say. But I know in this house it's quite it's quite liberal, and I know a number of the family here, where I have my studio apartment, have gone out over to the park. So it does seem kind of, a happy memorial, put it that way. I'd be very surprised if something ugly was to happen tonight.
Sombre, we could say, rather than somber, rather than celebratory. Rather than angry. Let's say.
Well, yeah, it's certainly not angry, but it's not even somber either. Like, it's more, not celebratory, I know, but maybe it's like a celebration of the lives as well of these people, because like there's music, there's a strong whiff in the air, Ollie. I won't say any more than that as well. I thought I better leave soon enough, or I might be presenting this program in a rather strange fashion. But so anyway, that's taking place, and of course up here, after Javier Ordóñez's death being, of course, the catalyst to all the violence, we had, in the end, 4 deaths in Verbinal. The mayor called around and everything. But, of course, we talked last week in our review of the whole year. At the end of the day, there's still been no fundamental changes to any of this, bar, of course, the change in uniform. But that's it.
Well, yeah, don't hold your breath. We've talked about this for a long time, haven't we?
Yeah. Of course, we are kind of entering in now to a protest season anniversary time. Like November, we're going to have the anniversary of the 2019, which has really been continued throughout April of this year and the ongoing protest, which some people still, I think, technically believe we're still in a national strike. So I'm guessing over the next few weeks, couple of months, we could see a return to mass protests on the streets. Again, I know it's a case of watching this space, but November tends to get, if there are going to be protests, November tends to be when they happen.
Yep, wait for the rainy season.
Yeah, exactly. When the thunder and lightning and the hailstones come. Anyway, Ollie, there was thunder and lightning and bangs and wallops of a different kind in Sylvania yesterday. It made for some quite chaotic and shocking viewing. Terrible that one person died in it, but this road traffic accident where a truck lost control on a busy Bogotá Nights road, another part of Cundinamarca, in Sylvania. I mean, it damaged about 10 buildings. I mean, lucky that only one person was injured. 4, I believe, or 6, I should say, injured. One person dead. 6 injured. I don't think they're that critically in a critical condition in hospital. But the images were quite shocking. Like, imagine being in one of the coffee shops there when you see this truck hurtling towards you that's overturned.
I mean, actually, I'd almost say, Brendan, that it's unusual that it doesn't happen more often. There's no sort of control over these vehicles. And, it's interesting that we use the word accident. Let's wait to see if we get any details on that. Was it genuinely an accident, or was it, a situation that could have been prevented?
Yeah, and well, will we even get proper details? Like so many of these things. Remember, we talked about there's been numerous accidents with pedestrians and cyclists, and I mentioned impunity for the police force, but it seems if you drive a car here, you can kind of do what you like, and it was an accident. Get on with it.
I'd say that's pretty much worldwide, to be honest. But yeah.
Well, I'd like to think it's a little bit different in Ireland. I mean, there would be action taken against.
Okay, you think that? Maybe talk to your local cycling group when you get home.
From a pedestrian point of view as well. But yeah, fair enough point. We spoke as well a few weeks ago, and we have to mention this. And I know we're kind of running through the news here, but we do want to get on to our main topic as well. With the delayed start, guys, so do apologise. We do apologise for that, but it was kind of outside of our control. But a few weeks ago, Duque gave a press conference, and he was talking about like the need to lock up these animals accused of child sex abuse for life. And we spoke about that, and as you said at the time, well, isn't that fair enough? If anyone is properly accused of this, but the Constitutional Court doesn't agree, and it's gone against this life sentence, perpetual sentence, as they call it, for those found guilty of child sex abuse. There might be something else behind this that maybe we were kind of not focusing in on, perhaps, Ollie?
Yeah, I wonder if they're kind of saying, look, this opens the door to precedent, that this might mean that other crimes might fall under the same banner, the same umbrella. I can kind of see where they're coming from on that. I would say that as a politician, opposing that is, it's not something you want to do. No one wants to be the person who's supporting the rights of paedophiles, which is a problem because, unless you believe that they're literally subhuman and should have their rights stripped from them, somebody does have to stand up in their defense. And, we've talked before about taxation. And one of the things about taxation is fundamentally, no one wants to support public money going to treatment of paedophiles. But equally, if that's effective, that's something that we should think about doing. So it's a tricky subject, very, very, very emotive. And yeah, I mean, I guess the thing about the Constitutional Court is they don't need to worry about election.
You just took the words out of my mouth. Exactly, like they're just making a decision based on what they see as law. And I have to say, of the numerous lawyer acquaintances that I have, I saw a number of them posting on social media. Well, not applauding this decision, but certainly in favour of it, saying that it was the right decision. And they were glad that this perpetual sentence didn't go ahead. I guess, is it a case that rather than making it a law in all cases, you take it case by case? And that might be the safest way to go.
Yeah, but equally so. I mean, once you've said that you can have prison in perpetuity, why not extend it for something else, extend it for something else, extend it for something else, and before you know it, we're in a situation we don't want to be in. So, yeah, maybe that's the reasoning behind it.
Yeah, okay. Now, kind of linked to this, but shocking and disturbing, and we talked about this when we were doing a show preparation earlier, a report saying that cases of a sexual abuse or abuse of a sexual nature anyway, on public transport, specifically the Transmilenio, higher than maybe had been thought that it was in the past. But like, this is a slightly perhaps a bit graphic, but some of the things that happen, and we've both heard stories from women that they've experienced this on Transmilenio, are kind of going, what? Like, are we surrounded by animals? It just seems horrific.
Yeah, it's bizarre, and I don't think any women watching. I don't know if anyone actually is watching, but
probably not.
But yeah, I mean, any women watching will probably say to us, "Yeah, obvio, don't you know about this?" But I mean, it is true. I mean, it's literally unbelievable. Some of the things I hear, just absolutely crazy. So just to give you the numbers. So the National Police are saying that in all of public transport, so not just the Transmilenio, but the whole transport system, they've picked up 560 capturas for physical harassment against women, and that's 17 this year. 17. Now, women's groups obviously are saying, going online and say, well, no one reports it. There's no point reporting it. It's not taken seriously, blah, blah, blah. There's no cameras in the buses. I mean, obviously, a lot of people actually have cameras these days. So, you'd think some of this will be picked up on people filming on their smartphone. But yeah, just absolutely. I mean, again, Brendan, it's one of those things, and we've seen this time and time again. There's so many things in Colombia that look like they kind of don't exist in official statistics because they're not measured, because they're not reported, and because nobody asks any questions. And it kind of doesn't matter what you talk about. It could be sexual harassment. It could be domestic violence. It could be suicide. It could be abuse of minors, pedophilia, that sort of thing. Underage prostitution, famously. And of course, what we see again as well, a lot of these things are things that predominantly affect women and girls. And they just don't seem to be taken seriously by any authority in any way.
Yeah, I kind of just, because I find it just, as I said, rather disturbing to talk that some men feel the need to do certain things on Transmilenio or any public transport. Again, people who are watching tonight, whatever, they can ask their Colombiana friends about that. Like, it's just, to me, it's like, what? Like, what on earth? There was a case of an Irish disc jockey who was on a plane, and he was caught touching himself on a plane. Again, he lost his job over it, and fair enough. But like, I don't know, was he out of his mind, or did something happen? But like, you're kind of wondering, what are these people doing? But yeah, very disturbing. Well, Angela, thanks. Good to know that Angela is listening, as ever. It wouldn't be a show without Angela, our Budget Sensei friend, listening. There is no reporting, as Dolly says. Some women prefer not to bother anymore. Police will ask for evidence. Well, exactly. Yeah, how much it could be difficult. But again, in the Transmillennial, the city buses, don't they all have cameras now?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Okay, not sure. Anyway, okay, we'll move on to sport, and this ties into our main topic as well. But Ollie, going into today's game in Barranquilla, home game against a Chile team that's struggling, really, they kind of needed to win this one because after 2 draws as well, and we spoke about the draw against Bolivia last week and then a draw in Asuncion. Okay, they were away from home and teams are going to take points off each other. But my goodness, that first 20 minutes, it was like, we're watching Real Madrid or Barcelona here with their tiki-tiki. So it was fantastic. I mean, that was your kind of typical game of 2 halves, wasn't it? The cliche of all time. But like after the first half, if Colombia were leading 4-0, Chile couldn't have had too many complaints. I mean, they were leading 2-0 as it was. But then for the first 20 minutes of the second half, Chile came out and really stuck it to them and got a goal back. And you're thinking, oh, God, we're going to have another bit of a thriller here between Colombia and Chile. Now, in the end, finished 3-1. Decent victory. But you probably keep a closer eye on Chile because you've got blood ties with Chile than maybe some of the rest of us do anyway. But, like, they've been struggling. They're on 7 points. I mean, what Colombia... Mm-hmm.
I mean, Chile had their golden generation, and that's very much on its way down now.
But, like, where do you lie then after this international window? 3 games in a week, as all teams are doing, and it's going to be 3 games again next month. The 7th of October away to Uruguay, the 10th at home to Brazil, and then the 14th, the big one against the neighbours Ecuador. In Barranquilla as well, and Ecuador are flying it. They're in 3rd. But 5 points from 3 games, I mean, do you think that's a decent return?
From these 3, yes.
Yeah.
I think Colombia will be extremely lucky to get 5 from the next 3.
Well, Brazil unbeaten. They were, last I checked, 2-0 up with 7 minutes to go against Peru. So they're flying it. And they played a game.
To be fair, Argentina didn't beat them.
Well, we do have to mention that. Okay, well, so we mentioned kind of we're going to talk about La Selección in more detail and the kind of history of it and our take on Colombian international football and their place in the world for the rest of the show. So let's just talk about what happened in Brazil with Brazil and Argentina. Bizarre. I mean, the voices I was hearing from Europe, the messages I was getting was like, oh, what a mess, Latinos, what were they playing at? But in fairness, like, it does seem completely disorganized the way it was done. Because what happened is, well, explain what happened, Ollie, first, just to go into.
Well, I think a lot of Europeans struggle a little bit to differentiate, the Brazilian Football Authority and the Brazilian Health Ministry, which are 2 very separate organizations, as they would be in any country. I mean, the FA don't get involved in health ministry stuff in the United Kingdom and vice versa. So basically, you have to go back a little bit here. A number of Brazilian players were blocked from this international call-up by their teams in England, because the teams in England said, look, there's no travel, you've got to quarantine at both ends, it's going to be too much hassle, you're going to end up missing a month, 2 weeks before the break, 2 weeks afterwards, it's too long, 10 days before, 10 days after, it's too long, it's going to be crazy, you're going to be off for 3 weeks, so we can't do it. Now, whether or not you think that's right or wrong, that's the situation. Now, some of the Argentinian players weren't blocked by their clubs and decided to enter Brazil anyway. The Brazilian Health Ministry, and again, remember, they've probably got people pointing at Bolsonaro all the time and saying, well, he doesn't do it. How come I've got to? So they've already got that monkey on their backs. But they've got a cut and shut case here. They just say, look, Giovanni Lo Celso, Romero as well from Tottenham, they cannot pretend that they were not in England last week. They can't do that. Like, they were in a televised football match. It's very obvious where they are. Literally, the whole world can see where they were last week. And now they've suddenly turned up in Brazil, and the rules are very strict. If you have been in the UK for the last 10 days, I think it is, you can't enter Brazil. End of discussion. Doesn't matter if you can enter Argentina or not. Doesn't matter if you can enter Ecuador or Bolivia or Paraguay, any of those countries. But the Brazilian regulations say we're not accepting visitors from certain countries, including the UK. It's kind of a red list thing. And Argentina flagrantly broke that law. So the Brazilian health ministry officials marched onto the pitch 10 minutes in and said, right, you and you're not meant to be in the country. Do one. So, look, I have a lot of sympathy with the Brazilian authorities on this, frankly.
Yeah, because I guess there are people who wouldn't be as well known as world footballers who might find loopholes around those things, like fly into Argentina, and I take it Brazil doesn't maybe have a quarantine. There's a compulsory quarantine for those entering Brazil from Argentina, perhaps not. So somebody might say, "Oh, I came in from Argentina. I wasn't in the UK," and if there was no proof. Exactly. But as you said, these guys clearly were in the UK. Everybody knows it. And they're, in blatantly in breach of the rules.
Especially when, you remember from Brazil's point of view, they'll be sitting there saying, well, a number of our players didn't make the squad because they were blocked from their teams in England. So it's a really weird situation all round. Now, some people, it's a really difficult situation. I happen to believe that the international version of any sport should be the highest expression. I've got no time at all for people who put club loyalty above international loyalty. And, Tottenham managed to come to an agreement, for example, with the Colombian defender Davinson Sanchez to say, all right, how about this? You play the first two qualifiers, then you go back to Croatia, you can train in Croatia, serve your 10 days quarantine essentially. You're only going to miss one match for us, you'll come back relatively sharp, you won't have been in a hotel. That seems to me like a grown-up and mature way of negotiating around that. Why couldn't Lo Celso, Romero, why couldn't they do that also with Spurs? Seems bizarre.
And it's out of character for the Argentinian football team, Ollie, isn't it?
Oh, what? Cheating and skiving around? Yeah, who would have thought it from the Argentinians, whether it's bribing Peru, punching balls into the net, rolling about as if they've been shot every 5 seconds, stamping on people. Yep, they've got they've got an unenviable record, haven't they, for fairness in sport?
Fair play. Anyway, I had to let you get that one out. Well, sticking with international football, and as we mentioned at the top of the show, and a shortened show as it might turn out to be, unless we get an extra 10 minutes at the end, because we started late. Our producer was watching the game. We all were watching the game, but some of us were ready. Colombia. When we were talking earlier about this, Ollie, you said that some of your earliest memories and your earliest associations with
Sorry, I just want to give a quick shout out just in case anyone doesn't know. The World Cup of track cycling is in Cali, Colombia, this weekend.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
Looks to be good. Not much local representation at the moment since Puerto got done for doping, but should be fun. And if you're anywhere near Cali, always worth going down to the velodrome. Anyway, sorry, go on.
And doesn't Britain have a few decent track cyclists right now?
Oh, yes. I mean, well,
Yeah.
they're always competitive. Australia, France, Britain, always going to be competitive.
Okay.
But
Cool.
anyway, onto football.
Yeah. So just talking about that when we were talking about this topic earlier. And you had said all of your kind of early associations or whatever, or links or what you knew of Colombia, all came through football and through La Selección de Colombia. Um, so can you explain that? Because in fairness, when I first set foot in Colombia in 2009 as a backpacker, I really knew little about it. It's only retrospectively that I go, oh, Espria, okay, this is his country. And what was it? Juan Pablo it was Angel, yeah, of Aston Villa.
Yep.
Okay, like I never like the country was kind of irrelevant to those players that I knew who were at Newcastle or Aston Villa or whatever like that, and the scorpion kick, of course. But I guess for you being in the UK and that scorpion kick, as we said, happened in Wembley from Rene Higuita. So those associations were stronger, and that was kind of your link to Colombia in many ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, actually, by the time Higuita rolled around to do his scorpion kick from Jamie Redknapp, of all people, actually, I was relative. I wouldn't say au fait with Colombian football. I certainly couldn't tell you much going on, but the national team, absolutely, yeah. Always had been pretty big. 1994 was the first World Cup that I really got into, and I was 12 and watching Pibe Valderrama, the Colombian Birdman in the stands, of course, the big Aguila guy. Again, when I came to Colombia, I was like, Aguila, yeah, it all connects now. That's why he's dressed up as an Aguila. And yeah, no, it.
Were you calling an Aguila at 12 years of age?
No. But when I, when I connected the dots, when I was in Colombia and I saw the beer, and I suddenly thought, okay, it makes sense. And I think the 1994 World Cup, it was a bit odd for us. England weren't there, so we were all, I think, paying attention a little bit more to other countries. Perhaps in a way that we wouldn't have done if England had been there sort of taking all the national press attention. So teams like Colombia, Pelé had hyped them up. He'd said they were going to be very good. There was, of course, the Escobar incident. So there was a lot going on there, and they really were one of the teams of the tournament in a strange way, even though they got knocked out in the group stage. And of course, as you say, football's, I guess, was a much bigger thing for me when I was young than it was for you. I would guess you'd be watching Gaelic,
Well, no. In fairness, when I was younger,
which I understand, there's the very unusual. I'm sure regular listener Kieran Duffy will want to hear about this. But I'm led to believe that the extremely unusual sight of Mayo in an All Ireland final. What's going on there?
Well, it's not an unusual sight to see Mayo in the final. What's unusual is the pairing. It's the first time ever they've contested the final, Mayo and Tyrone. Now, we are going off on tangents here, but if Kieran Duffy's listening, I did promise I'd mention Mayo. It's on my notes, but Ollie got there ahead of me, fair play to him. Let's hope that Tyrone don't get ahead of Mayo in a similar fashion on Saturday as that final is. But just to answer your question there, to be honest, when I was younger, I was more a soccer man, a football man, actually. Gaelic football was something I got into more when I entered secondary school. When I was in primary school, I was all football, soccer, that was. So 1994, I do remember, but from a Republic of Ireland and just a Republic of Ireland point of view. Like, I remember when we defeated Italy in our first game at the Giant Stadium in New York. It was an evening kickoff, and I was Saturday night as it was, and sitting on the sofa with sausages in front of me. So I do remember that. But the Colombian team, it didn't register. I didn't know anything about it. As I said, it's only retrospectively. But like, I guess for guys, people listening in, Angel, I don't know if you're a big football fan. I think you've told us before that when La Selección play, you do have a bit of an interest, but you're not that mad into it. But like that 90s team, compared to the 2014 team, which kind of seemed shiny and bright and you just had to love. And I think you still love that 90 1990, 1994 team. And of course, the big one, that massive win in Buenos Aires, 5-0 against Argentina. This kind of game where finally Colombia arrived and said, you can't be treating us like muck anymore. We can do a number on you. And they actually took 6 points off Argentina in that qualifying campaign, beat them in Barranquilla, and then hammered them in Buenos Aires. So it was kind of an arrival of this is Colombian football. But I'd like to know what people think of that 1990s team, because the way I see it, it was the right team, but kind of at the wrong time for the country because of all the violence that was going on here and the bad press. And of course, with that 1994 team, Andres Escobar and his murder and all that kind of stuff for scoring the own goal against the US, wasn't it? So you had all that tied in, and the narcos and that kind of stuff. Whereas it was a shiny, bright team that came with Jose Pekerman, and when they reached the quarterfinals of the 2014 Cup. And this is where it kind of links into me in Ireland. I equate it to the Irish team that got to the World Cup in 1990, even though I was quite young and don't really remember that. But that was Ireland beginning, and then subsequently in 1994, the Celtic Tiger was starting to roar. Ireland was emerging out of a troubled past, backwards, the kind of black sheep of Europe. We were becoming shiny and bright, and things were looking good in a rising working class. Not exactly, but quite similar to what was happening in Colombia around 2014. The peace process was going on. There was a rising middle class. It looked like, yes, Colombia was being recognized for positive stuff on the world stage.
Slightly grumpy manager from your fierce rivals, becoming a legend.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like as Jack Charlton became an honorary Irishman, Jose Pekerman became an honorary Colombian. Did he? I'm sure he probably got the.
I have to cool you up on this. I'm frankly astonished by your irreverence for the man here. I do believe you're referring to El Profe Pekerman.
Oh, sorry. Right, yeah, El Profe. Well, in fairness, they're all El Profe. I heard them saying El Profe to the commentators tonight on Caracol. They always say El Profe, whoever it is in the commentary box. But so that's kind of the difference for me, is that the 2014 team was strutting its stuff on the world stage, but to a much more confident Colombia, whereas the team in 1994, 1998 was a bit of a washout too, was it? But it was doing stuff, and it was going to that World Cup, but with a lot of dark stuff in the background going on.
And there are, that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, we do remember, especially the 94 World Cup, you remember it for the tragedy, obviously the Escobar thing, but also actually that fantastic goal from the Maradona of the Bosphorus himself, Georgi Hadji. That superb chipped goal. Again, that was against Colombia.
Yeah, well, sorry, I'm just reading Angela's message there. So she said the 90s were a lot fiercer. If you mean the team were tougher, that would kind of come to my mind as well. I kind of think maybe...
But I think that's football in general as well. I mean, it sort of reflected the country, doesn't it? You cannot imagine a player like Tino Asprilla in the modern game, can you? Can you imagine Tino Asprilla turning up in a European club these days? I mean, he would be he'd be marched on very quickly for professional reasons, I'm sure. I mean, even James is nowhere near as wild as Tino was back in his days. And again, you talk about legends. I mean, certainly we always had it very clear that Tino Asprilla was Colombian, and that being Colombian was fun and exotic, and wasn't he crazy? And he was properly crazy. And loved. I mean, if for any reason he goes back to Newcastle, I'm sure he won't ever have to put his hand in his pocket.
But that's interesting. That's a good point, though, because, well, I think we have an emerging hero now. He's more than emerging. He's already announced himself, especially those following South American football and Copa America. But Lucha Diaz, I mean, again tonight, another great game from him. Not sure could you really credit him with the goal, but I guess he got it on target. But he kind of seems to be now the guy who's going to take over the mantle, perhaps from a James Rodriguez. Who is he? Is he going to be back? Won't he? Or what's the story? But James, at least from that 2014, obviously the wonder goal against Uruguay, the free kick in Santiago as well in the qualifying, and but he had that kind of, I won't say wild, like not tough, as in like a tough player like Esprit and that kind of stuff on the field, but just a guy who liked to have fun, put it that way, and has a personality to him. Whereas some of these uber professionals now just kind of seem a little bit boring in the modern game. So I get that idea. But,
I mean, and I do sympathise with modern footballers, to be honest, when they kind of come in with their, but the press just will rip them to pieces if they say anything honest. So they just say something anodyne, with nothing behind it. Just say something absolutely standard, and that way you're not going to get any hassle. It's just easier. But I miss players. I miss the 1990s in many ways, and I particularly miss 90s football. But there's a lot more to Colombia than just the 90s team. So a little known fact, especially outside South America, is that the first Olympico goal ever scored at a World Cup was by a Barranquillero called Marcus Coll. Against, of all people, Lev Yashin, the legendary Soviet goalkeeper. And he cheekily, for those of you who don't know, an Olympico is scoring directly from a corner. And he says he looked into the penalty box, he saw a bunch of big Russians and small Colombians, and he thought, I'd be better off just shooting it straight in. And took everybody by surprise, and that was that.
So he definitely meant it, it wasn't.
Oh yeah, no, he absolutely meant it, and sparked a famous comeback in Colombia's first ever point at a World Cup in 1962.
Right. Okay. I think I mentioned this before, because going back into those days, it'd be fascinating, to be able to go back in time and see what it was like. Because we mentioned at the top of the show about fake jerseys and everyone wears the jersey and stuff. Like, what was the support for La Selección back then? A country, again, just kind of emerging around that time. Was that when you had the Frente Nacional or whatever, very bloody couple of decades? Was there much of a love for the football back then? Could they care? And apparently there was a big Argentinian influence. Like, a lot of the clubs, Millonarios and that, had big stars from other countries, and particularly Argentina here. I was reading a thesis from a British guy who did a study on this. Didn't get to finish it yet, actually, but I've read those links. So perhaps it wasn't as Colombian back in those times.
The El Dorado years, when Colombia wasn't affiliated to FIFA in the 50s, which meant they could pay much higher wages.
Ah, okay, so that's why they got the big boys in from Argentina. Interesting. Well, just to give a couple of viewers, perhaps, that we only have on this night, on the night when La Selección de Colombia was playing. Angela was saying, well, cycling was king in the 50s and 60s, and well, it still is, depending on the time of the year and what's happening. And also, she said she couldn't understand when Peckerman stopped being idolised. So is that to say that you think he should still be idolised and perhaps should be the next president of Colombia?
It sort of made me think a little bit of it. It was similar to Arsene Wenger, I think, and about the same sort of time where, he'd done great things, he'd been wonderful, but the halo slipped a little bit, and he did, by the end, people, I think, were tired and they wanted a change, and I think it was a bit ugly the way that he was moved on, and, he wasn't, by the end, he wasn't sort of given the respect that, frankly, he deserved, I think.
Yeah, well,
having said that, I think it was time for him to move on, I think. I think some people could have been a bit more gracious about about saying that.
I do have something to say on that, but just to say to Andres Mateo, who's written in as well, saying that I don't know how popular this is, but Asprilla, Tino Asprilla, a total disaster. In what sense? As a footballer? A bit of a legend in many areas still.
Oh, very much. Yeah, I mean, honestly, if you asked anybody I know in England to name famous Colombians, Tino Asprilla would be top of everyone's list, I think. I would also say that Tino famously, monetarily a bit of a disaster, but did at least have somebody to look after him. My favourite rumour about Colombia, Bogotá, which I'm sure isn't true, but I just don't have the heart to investigate, is that all the little yellow minibuses are run by a Tino-invested company. I choose to believe that. All the yellow ones. And I choose to believe that. And every time I see a yellow bus in Bogotá, I think, it's one of the Tino buses.
Oh, there's a little depot of the yellow collectivos here. That'd be interesting. By the way, just to on the Peckerman thing, I think one of the reasons, again, to kind of go back to the Republic of Ireland in the Jack Charlton era, there was a belief that the football just became too negative and he wasn't getting the best out of the talent at his disposal. And like when you look at that 2018 World Cup defeat to who beat them in that one? Ollie, what was it? No, the loss in penalties to England in the second round, wasn't it? Just straight out of the first stage.
The first knockout stage. I mean, look,
but they were very negative that night.
Oh yeah, actually, I mean, and I started that day in England. I was leaving England on a flight coming back to Colombia, and which I thought was rather apt. And I have to say, before the match, certainly nobody in England thought that we were favourites. The general mood was difficult match against Colombia, but things are easier after that. But we'll have to turn up against Colombia. They're going to be a dangerous team. We've definitely got a real match on our hands here. And, when I watched the match on a replay, like I said, I was travelling. And, obviously went immediately to watch the match afterwards. And, just didn't even attempt to play football. And I found that very strange. It was a cynical performance. A lot of my friends in England were dropping me messages saying, what the hell is going on? Why are they so cynical? What are they? They're just rolling about and, play acting all the time. So I think there was a lot of love and a lot of goodwill for Colombia in general before the match. Afterwards, I think that was tarnished a little bit. And I just far too cautious against what was, let's be honest, a very limited England team. And if Colombia had just taken the shackles off and said, we don't have James Rodriguez, but you know what? He's long past his best at that point. He's barely played for Bayern and Real Madrid. So, let Quintero wreak havoc. That would have been the way forward.
Which we saw him doing tonight. A decent performance from him.
Oh, he's a fantastic player, Quintero.
Yeah,
absolutely.
No, it was certainly. It was like they were already beaten before they'd taken to the field against England that night.
Bizarre.
Yeah, an inferiority complex. Like if Colombia were kind of everybody's favorite team in 2014, if your own team wasn't in it or whatever, everybody's second team if your own team wasn't in the 2014 World Cup, it's like in the 2018 World Cup was like, good luck Colombia, you won't be missed kind of thing. After that, England game, they certainly did lose a lot of
although
credit.
they sent an incredible amount of fans, partly because Colombia has an unusual visa position with Russia. So it's very easy for Colombians to enter Russia, whereas, obviously with most countries, it's not easy to enter Russia, and B, they're a bit arsey with Colombians. So for that reason, just hundreds and thousands of Colombians turned up. I think
Yeah, okay.
I think more than anybody in Europe except Germany, maybe. Anyway, enormous. Um, but yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I was just
interesting what you say about 2014. I mean, rewind. Do you remember watching the match against Uruguay, which I think was really the big one?
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. I was in a tienda bar in the center. Needless to say, surrounded by plenty of Colombians, and then a sprinkling of foreigners of
You're in a tienda bar.
non.
I'm impressed.
Yeah.
We were in a bar actually not very far from where I live now, on the Septima, which had clandestinely opened because, of course, it was a dry day. And so we got sort of, we snuck our way in and we all drank with the doors closed and that sort of thing. But, celebrating after that, I just had no idea. Like, if you had said to me, you know what's happening to James Rodriguez after this? He sinks into mediocrity and ends up at Everton. And can't even get into the squad at Everton 8 years later. I would have said, come on, you're pulling my leg. So, yeah, very strange.
Yeah, a bit of a fall. Now, perhaps positive news. I see Blue Radio is reporting that James is back at training at Everton. So there's pictures of him there training at Goodison Park. So let's see. Maybe he's seen the selection without him. Maybe he thought this was going to be a disastrous international window, and everyone would be going, "Oh, we need James back." Whereas now the talk is kind of, well, I guess if he comes, he obviously still has his supporters, no doubt about it. But I have to say tonight, obviously very impressed with Colombia. But again, you have to say how good are Chile. The next international window will tell a lot. So I guess as we're wrapping up here, and by the way, hi to Jacob Toms. By the way, the Cafe Plus winner last week. He gave us an address here in Bogotá. That coffee should be getting there in the next week. So good to know we're being watched down in New Zealand. But just to wrap up, I was going to say, do you think we're going to see, put on your kind of predictive hat here, are we going to see Colombia in Qatar for 2022?
Yes, depending on who they get in the playoff. But I'll say, I think they could end up in the playoff, and they could qualify. I think we'd have to say Brazil and Argentina are going to go top two. Ecuador look solid at the moment, so you'd have to say it's Colombia, Uruguay, for fourth and fifth, I think.
Yeah, Chile seem a bit too far behind. Paraguay, it's hard to know with them. Yeah, exactly. So it might be a toss-up. But then, yeah, Ecuador could implode.
And yes, I was about to say, and it's entirely possible that Ecuador will just fall into a hole and get into trouble. So, yeah, but I'd have to say maybe it's those three going for third, fourth, fifth. If Colombia end up in the playoffs, who do they get?
Well, speaking of New Zealand, it could be New Zealand, and that's who Peru got for the Russian World Cup. And
who is the playoff against this time? Is it against Oceania again? I thought it was against.
I'm not sure.
I thought it was against the North Americans, but okay.
I'd have to check that. Does it go on a rotation or is it an open draw? How does it work?
It changes quite regularly. I'll have to I haven't really paid attention to it, I have to say.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, I've just been told we've got another 2 minutes here. Our producer has been kind because of those 10 minutes. He's probably finishing off his Aguila or poker anyway, so he doesn't care. He's all relaxed. Yeah, I don't know. If I was a betting man. I mean, right now, if we're halfway through, well, 8 teams are halfway through. Brazil and Argentina are a game behind. So they're in 5th place. It's a very tough, as we mentioned in our wrap-up to sports news, with Uruguay, Brazil, and Ecuador. But 2 of them are at home. But Brazil at home, you never know. I mean, will Brazil start letting up a little bit? They're on undefeated, haven't dropped a point yet. So they're on
thing
8
about
games,
Brazil is
24 points.
Brazil could probably field at least 3 sort of teams that were all fairly handy.
Yeah. But like you look at Colombia again tonight, the kind of household names. Now we're getting new household names or whatever, but like it's solid, and they seem to be playing together, playing for each other. Which big question marks when Keros was there.
Yeah,
So like
that was disastrous. I mean, again, it's something that's often put to fans, and I think fans always like to say, don't they? Oh, just change everything. Oh, just change something. Get rid of the manager. He doesn't have a clue. And you kind of go, well, maybe it's not just the manager. And of course, Guerres came in and was, appallingly bad.
Well, in his first competitive game, wasn't that a 2-2 draw in Santiago de Chile? But now, okay, you can go, well, what are Chile up to at the moment? It's difficult to know.
Yeah, so. and let's be honest. I mean, he beat a rotten Venezuela very handily. Yeah, okay, great, but yeah, no, wasn't vintage. Ronaldo Rueda came in, big call, told James to do one. That's a big, brave call, and justified, I think. And he seems to have got the team purring for now. So, yeah.
And back dancing, scoring goals and stuff. Did you see their little moves tonight?
Yeah, no,
a bit
of
of dancing,
a
bit of jogging on the spot. Yeah,
not a fan. I always think, look, either you're doing somersaults or you do something genuinely fun. But yeah, I never really like the mugging. It all feels a little bit too much made for Instagram for me.
Well, anyway, Ollie, we've reached time here. So, have you got your chocolates and roses all lined up for next week? The following weekend, not this weekend coming. Dia de Amor y Amistad and all that. No,
no. But let's talk about that next. Let's talk about that next week.
I'm just, I'm teeing it up. We'll be all lovey-dovey next week. Ollie and Brendan do Dia de Amor y Amistad, or at least anticipate it. Guys, thanks for tuning in. Well done. Vamos Colombia. We're on the way to the Qatar 2022. I said it. We're gonna get there. Anyway, until next week. Goodbye.
Ciao.